Now, yesterday I put up a video discussing some of the misconceptions people have about the Jedi and their ways, and if you didn't see it, that's fine, it's not required viewing for this video, but I'll put a link in the description below nonetheless. Anyway, I said in that video I'd likely make a follow-up video in the coming days to discuss some of the points or questions that you all brought up in the comments. And one of the things that was brought up, and it's something that I've debated or talked about many times on my Discord server and elsewhere, but never really in a video, is that if Qui-Gon Jinn is a true Jedi, or at least the best or closest representation we're given in the films, especially the prequels, why does he influence Watto's chance cube role and not let quote-unquote fate decide? And since this is not only a popular question, at least for me to get asked, but also leads to some even bigger, more interesting questions about the Force and the Jedi, I thought I'd devote a short video to it. Okay, so first of all, let me very quickly reiterate that I fully believe Qui-Gon Jinn is a true Jedi through and through, that he is exactly what a Jedi should be, how they should think, behave, and act. Some like to claim that he's a gray Jedi or that his disobedience makes him some sort of renegade Jedi who has a beef with the Council and they with him because he doesn't follow their ways and he thinks he knows best or something along those lines. But, in my opinion, I think that's completely missing the point of the character, and that he's in the Phantom Menace to show us, again, what a true Jedi looks like and what they fundamentally believe, which is that the only thing that should ever guide them is the will of the Force, that they shouldn't get hung up on all the rules of the Jedi Code, when all they have to do, all they should do, is quiet their minds, listen to the will of the Force, and seek to carry it out. In other words, Qui-Gon Jinn was in the film to highlight just how far removed the Council and most of the rest of the Jedi were from what they should be. They were the ones who had strayed from the path of the true Jedi, not him, and hence it begins to explain why they so easily fell prey to Palpatine as well as their eventual demise, because as Yoda even says at one point, they had become arrogant and sure of themselves. They had become puppets of the Republic and lost sight of their real purpose. Hell, their first reaction when learning the Sith might be back was to completely dismiss it, not to believe it, because how could the Sith ever return on their watch, under their noses? Anyway, just like Qui-Gon Jinn himself, I fully believe that it was the will of the Force to find Anakin, and to go on to train him in the proper ways of the Jedi, so that he could bring an end to the Sith, and maybe even before they brought so much suffering to the galaxy with the Empire. Though that's certainly debatable. And it's a good discussion for another video, because it's not impossible, and it might even be likely, that the Force wanted the misguided Jedi of the time to also be brought to an end, and that had he been trained properly under Qui-Gon Jinn from the start, and far removed from the manipulations of Palpatine, Anakin, not Luke or now Rey, would have and should have been the one to rebuild the Jedi Order. But as I said, that's a good debate for another time or another video, one you can feel free to start in the comments below if you'd like, and I'll carry on at another point. But for now, let's just operate under the belief that it was the will of the Force for Qui-Gon Jinn to find and, at the very least, free Anakin, even if he wasn't meant to be the one to train him. And simply put, if Qui-Gon believes this, if he believes he has been led here by the Force to Tatooine of all places to find and free Anakin, he is going to do whatever he must to see it through. He'll even, without hesitation, manipulate the role of a chance cube, especially one that's almost undoubtedly weighted. And quite honestly, and I certainly mean no offense to anyone, but I'm unsure why some seem to have such an issue with him doing this or get so hung up on it. I'm unsure how altering the role of a chance cube is seen as crossing some sort of line, or even un-Jedi-like, when they've been known to do things like influence the mind of others via mind tricks to get what they want as well. I mean, anytime a Jedi uses the Force, you could make the argument they're unfairly stacking the odds in their favor, but the key is they're not doing it just to get what they want, or shouldn't. They're doing it because they fully believe this is what the Force wants them to do, why they're even in the situation in the first place. And quite frankly, altering the role of a chance cube and knowing Watto will abide by the results of a bet out of fear of the Hutts, which Qui-Gon even threatens him with later, it seems like one of the easiest and safest ways of getting Anakin out of there. Safer than trying to forcibly take him and risk him being blown up, or maybe even Watto ending up being the one who gets hurt or killed in the process. And maybe what people have an issue with in this particular case is when Watto says, "We'll let fate decide," right before he tosses the cube, which, when Qui-Gon alters the role, implies he doesn't believe in fate or that he's afraid the Force won't give him the outcome he wants. Which leads to the real interesting question here. Can the Force actually decide the outcome of the role of a chance cube? Can it directly manipulate outcomes of seemingly random events like this? And if the answer to that question is yes, then it means the Force, to at least some degree, has power or control over the events in the physical world, that it can make certain things happen the way it wants. Which makes me wonder, what's the point of the Jedi even? After all, they exist primarily to listen to and carry out the will of the Force, because the Force itself, I'd assume, cannot otherwise make these desired outcomes actually occur. But if it can, if it has control over such things, or everything, I'd ask why it allows anything ever to go wrong, why it allows things that cause imbalance or go against its will, like the emergence of the Sith, for example. And so in the case of the Chance Cube, I'd argue Qui-Gon is simply doing what the Force wants him to do. He is the means by which the Force acts and gets the desired result, which again, to oversimplify it, is basically what the Jedi are for. They exist to do the things the Force cannot do directly. And if you want to make the case that Qui-Gon shouldn't have altered the role of a Chance Cube, you again have to make the same argument about pretty much anything else Jedi ever do. And yet, no one seems to have an issue with Obi-Wan mind-tricking a stormtrooper in A New Hope to get past them. No one has an issue with him literally altering the mind or thought process of another living being. Nor would they say he didn't let fate decide whether or not the droids would be confiscated by the Empire in that moment. Because if he had, and the droids were captured or destroyed, Hope would have ended right there and then, for the entire galaxy. But since Obi-Wan used the Force to get Luke, the droids, and himself out of that situation, the plans to the Death Star got back to the Rebellion, and Luke ultimately blew up that Death Star and took his first steps to becoming a Jedi, one that would eventually help bring an end to the Sith. In other words, Obi-Wan left nothing to chance. He did exactly what he needed to do in that moment. He did what the Force wanted him to do, but probably couldn't do itself. And look, maybe the real issue here is that if everything always happens just like the Force wants it to, then what's the point of Star Wars, really? If we're led to believe right in the story that everything is predetermined, that all these events and character actions are completely up to the Force to decide, then it means none of these characters have any control over who they are or what they do. It means Vader or Anakin didn't make a conscious choice to come back to the light to save his son from Palpatine. It was just a moment predetermined by the Force. And why I think the future is difficult to see and always in motion, as Yoda says, is because there is the will of the Force, what it thinks or inherently or somehow just instinctually believes is the optimal outcome of all future events, but it's always in conflict with the will of everyone else, or shifting and or adjusting as others do the unexpected. And these small choices made by the average person don't generally have all that much impact on the balance or how the future will play out, and hence they're allowed to live out their lives, and they don't ever have Jedi showing up at their door making sure their lives go a certain way. However, the Sith, who can and do use the Force to radically alter the course of events, and sometimes on a galactic scale, can and do obviously lead to great imbalance, which is why the Jedi seek and destroy them, because the will of the Sith, or their own selfish desires, can and will greatly affect or impact the will of the Force, and then impede on the will or free will of others. Anyway, I didn't really mean to get quite so deep into this topic. Instead, my point really was just to show that Qui-Gon Jinn is doing what he feels he must when he alters the dice roll. It's not about him not trusting in the Force or anything like that. It's about him acting on its behalf, or at least that's how I see it. And he wisely seized upon the opportunity to safely free Anakin in that moment, and it's no more or no less than that. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about Qui-Gon altering the dice roll. Do you have an issue with it, or do you believe he was simply doing what he must, what the Force willed him to do? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.